Hey guys, tonight we are going to build something. Not a birdhouse, not a flimsy piece of flat-pack furniture, but the most ambitious DIY megaproject in history of full scale. Earth and timber fortress. You're about to become a master engineer, a community organizer, and a heavy-duty laborer in pre-European New Zealand, or Aotearoa. Your task is to help construct the ingenious fortified villages of the Maori people, unlike that wobbly bookshelf you might have built. If this project fails, the consequences are a little more final. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'd love to see where and when you're listening from. So drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into 2 nights' journey together. The air is cool and damp against your skin, carrying the scent of wet ferns and distant wood smoke. The world around you is a symphony of unfamiliar birdsong, a vibrant, living soundscape that has existed for millennia. You are standing with your people, your Wanu, at the base of a formidable, forest-clad hill. There are no blueprints on paper, no laser levels, no rumbling machinery. The blueprint exists in the minds of the elders, the kaumajua, and the tools are what you can make from stone, wood, and bone. This isn't just a construction project. It's an act of survival, a declaration of identity, and an immense community effort. For now, you live in an unfortified settlement, a Aotearoa, nestled in a warmer, more sheltered valley. It's good for growing your precious kamara, the sweet potato that forms the backbone of your diet, but it's vulnerable. Below, constant hum of anxiety has settled over your people. Tensions with a neighboring hapu, or subtrib, have been simmering. A dispute over resources, a perceived insult, a remembered transgression from a generation ago. The reasons for conflict are many and complex. The whispers have grown louder, the glances from hunting parties more challenging. The decision has been made. You must build a place of refuge, a fortress. This isn't a new idea. Of course, this land is ancient, and the memory of conflict is etched into its very bones. A major historical understanding is that POC construction was a direct response to the prevalence of intertribal warfare. It was a defensive arms race played out with earthworks and timber instead of steel and gunpowder. You're simply taking your turn in a long tradition of strategic building. You look around at your relatives. There's your uncle, his hands already calloused from shaping stone into adze heads. There are your cousins, their young energy waiting to be unleashed on the monumental task of digging and hauling. Even the elders, their faces like beautifully carved maps of a long life, are here to offer wisdom, guidance, and the crucial spiritual oversight. This project will demand everything from everyone. Here's a little detail to put it in perspective. You're not just building one of a handful of forts. At the peak of POC construction, it's estimated there were over 5 of them, mostly across the North Island. If you could somehow float above the landscape, you'd see the ridgelines on coastal headlands freckled with these earthwork defenses. They were a fundamental part of the society and the landscape. Some were huge, housing over 1,000 people, while others were little more than fortified watchers for a single family. Yours will be somewhere in between, large enough to protect your entire hapu, a testament to your collective strength. But what exactly is this place for? Is it a permanent, fortified city where you will live out your days? Or is it more of a seasonal citadel, a place to retreat to only when danger is imminent, while you continue to live and farm down in the more comfortable lowlands? This is something historians and archaeologists still debate. The evidence varies from site to site. Some show signs of long-term, intensive occupation, deep middens full of shells and bones, extensive housing, and large food storage pits. Others seem more temporary. The purpose of your specific paw is clear in your mind. It is a refuge, but it is also a statement. The size, the height, the complexity of a paw speaks volumes about the mana of its people, their prestige, authority, and spiritual power. A well-built pa is a warning, a projection of strength that might just prevent a fight from ever happening. It's the ultimate deterrent. You shift your weight. The cool earth soft under your bare feet. You hold your primary tool for the work ahead. A comb, a digging stick. It's a simple thing. A long, fire-hardened piece of wood, sometimes with a footrest carved into its side for extra leverage. It feels deceptively light for the tons of earth it will soon be asked to move. The challenge seems impossible, like trying to carve a mountain with a spoon. But you are not alone. The collective energy of your community is palpable. It's a shared resolve, a quiet understanding that your safety and your future are tied to the earth you are about to move and the timber you are about to raise. The talking is done. The spiritual blessings have been sought. Your gaze drifts upwards, towards the imposing silhouette of the hill that will become your home. The project begins with the first light of dawn. The first rays of sun are just beginning to pierce the thick canopy of the forest, casting long, ethereal shafts of light that dance on the morning mist. The air is still heavy with the promise of a day's hard work, but you don't pick up your digging stick just yet. The first, and arguably most important, act of building a pa has nothing to do with digging. It's about choosing you, along with a small, select group of wise elder, a seasoned warrior, and a woman known for her knowledge of edible and medicinal plants of the scouting party. Your mission to find the perfect piece of real estate for your fortress. Think of it like the most high-stakes property search in history. You're not just looking for a nice view in good school districts. You're looking for a place that will actively try to keep you alive. You move silently through the dense undergrowth, the giant palmier tree ferns brushing against your shoulders. The elder leads the way, not with a map, but with an encyclopedic knowledge of the landscape passed down through generations. Every stream, every ridge, every significant rock has a name and a story. Your mental checklist is long and demanding. The number one item, the non-negotiable, is defensibility. You are looking for nature's own fortifications. A steep-sided hill is good. A hill with sheer cliffs on one or more sides is even better. You're looking for what military strategists would call a force multiplier location that makes your small number of defenders far more effective. The goal is to make any potential attacker exhausted, exposed, and demoralized before they even reach your walls. As you climb a promising-looking ridge, you can feel the burn in your own legs. This is a good sign. If you're puffing, an enemy carrying weapons will be gasping. From the top of the ridge, you get your second checklist item, a commanding view. The world spreads out below you. You can trace the silver ribbon of the river as it winds its way to the sea. You can see the vast, dark, green expanse of the forest, and far in the distance, you can just make out a thin plume of smoke from another settlement friend or foe. It's good to know where they are. This vantage point is your early warning system. No one will be able to approach your home and see. But here's where the compromises begin, and where historians still debate the priorities of poor builders. Was it always about pure military advantage? You found a spectacular spot of sheer-sided volcanic cone that is almost a natural fortress already. The proba, it smiles from the nearest reliable stream, and the soil on its slopes is thin and rocky, useless for gardening. To live here would mean hauling water up a treacherous path every single day and walking for an hour to get to your Kumara fields. A fortress without reliable access to food and water is just a beautifully located trap. The defenders will eventually be starved out. This is the central dilemma you face. Another potential site you investigate is a low, gentle hill right next to a wide, slow-moving river teeming with eels, with rich alluvial soil perfect for your gardens. From a resource perspective, it's a paradise, but its gentle slopes are an open invitation to an attacking force. Building a defensible pa here would require immense earthworks, deeper ditches, higher walls to compensate for the lack of natural barriers. So you discuss. The warrior in your group points to the defensible cone, arguing that hardship in peacetime is a fair price for safety in wartime. The woman, the gatherer, points to the resource-rich hill, arguing that a strong, Well-fed community is a better defense than any cliff face. The elder listens patiently, weighing their words. This is a conversation that happened thousands of times across this land, and the correct answer was different for every community depending on their specific circumstances, their relationship with their neighbors, and their own internal politics. And then there's the layer that modern strategists might miss, a piece of knowledge that is uniquely yours. The land is not just a collection of tactical features. It is alive with history and spiritual energy, with its own mana. As you stand on another potential site, the elder becomes very still. He explains that this place, though strategically sound, is Wahitapu, a sacred site, perhaps a burial ground of a great ancestor or a place where a significant historical event occurred. To disturb the soil here, to build upon it, would be a profound offense to the spirits, bringing misfortune and weakness to your people. The site is immediately struck from the list. Conversely, another hill, though not perfect, is known to be the resting place of a powerful and beloved chief from your lineage. Building there would mean his spirit would watch over you, his mana strengthening your own. The spiritual geography is just as important as the physical kind. Finally, after a long day of walking, climbing, and debating, you find it. Day-long, narrow ridge that juts out like a finger, with steep, unforgiving slopes on three sides. It's not a standalone cone, which makes it slightly less ideal, but a single, narrow approach along the ridge is a bottleneck that can be easily defended. The summit is broad and relatively flat, large enough for your community. Best of all, about halfway down one slope, tucked into a sheltered fold in the land, a small, clear spring emerges from the rock, promising a secure water source. And at the base of the ridge, the land flattens out into a patch of fertile ground that gets plenty of sun. It's the perfect compromise of defense, water, food, and building materials from the nearby forest. There's a feeling of rightness about this place. The elder nods slowly. This is it. This will be your home. You turn and begin the walk back to your people. The image of the hill burned into your mind. The real work is about to begin. You arrive back at the Kinga, your unfortified village, just as the sky is turning a soft, bruised purple. The scent of cooking fires hangs in the air, a comforting, familiar smell. But tonight, the atmosphere is different. It's charged with anticipation. Everyone stops what they're doing as your scouting party enters the central space. Their faces turn towards you, waiting. You can feel the weight of their collective hope and anxiety. Picking the spot was the easy part. Now comes the politics. You can't just announce, "All right, everyone, pack your things. We're moving to that hill over there and we're all going to spend the next several months doing back-breaking labor." That's not how it works. A PA is a community project, and building one requires community consensus. Your entire hapu, your subtrib, needs to be on board. This is a crucial, often overlooked, aspect of PA construction. It was as much a social and political challenge as it was an engineering one. The physical fortress had to be built on a foundation of social cohesion. The chief of your hapu, a man respected for his wisdom and his lineage which connects him directly back to the founding ancestors of your canoe, steps forward. The elder from your scouting party begins to speak. His voice is calm but firm, painting a picture of the chosen site. He describes the steep slopes, the clear view, the hidden spring. He speaks of its strategic advantages in a way that everyone can understand, using his hands to trace the shape of the ridge in the air. He is, in essence, making a sales pitch for a massive, unpaid, community-wide group project. You watch the faces in the crowd. You see nods of agreement from some of the younger, eager warriors. You see thoughtful, calculating expressions on the faces of the heads of other families. Or when you also see skepticism. An old man, respected for his skill in carving, speaks up. His voice is raspy with age. He questions the distance to the best stands of 2 tera trees, the timber you'll need for the most important carvings and posts. It's a long way to haul such heavy logs, he says, not as a rejection, but as a practical problem that needs to be acknowledged. Aotearoa's right. His concern is valid. Another woman, whose family Eskumara gardens are particularly fertile in your current location, expresses her worry. Will the new site of soil is good? Will the harvest be as bountiful? The success of the Kumara crop is literally a matter of life and death, determining whether you feast or starve over the winter. Her question hangs in the air. A reminder that moving your entire community isn't just about building new defenses. It's about reestablishing your entire way of life. These are the logistical hurdles. Then come the deeper, more political ones. Your hapu is large, made up of several extended family groups, each with its own leader and its own subtle internal dynamics. While you are all related, it's not always one big happy family. Old rivalries or disagreements can simmer just below the surface. A major historical point is that Maori society was complex and not always unified. The idea of a single, monolithic tribe is a bit of a simplification. Alliances could be fluid, and cooperation, even within a single hapu, often had to be carefully negotiated. The chief knows this. He doesn't command. He persuades. He speaks of the growing threat from the neighboring tribe. He reminds everyone of a past raid, years ago, that took them by surprise. He speaks of the mana of their hapu, and how a strong, impressive power will enhance it, making them respected and feared. HES appealing to their pride, their memory, and their fear. It's a masterful display of leadership. Here's a curious detail about these community meetings. The seating arrangement and speaking order were often highly structured. It was a free-for-all. Your position within the group, determined by your lineage and status, dictated where you sat and when you could speak. This formal process, the WHAI Carrero, ensured that all significant voices were heard in a respectful and orderly way. It prevented a descent into a chaotic shouting match. You, as a younger member of the community, remain silent, listening and learning. Your role will come later, with your physical labor. But what if, despite all the chief's persuasive rhetoric, a significant family group still refuses to join the project? Historians debate how often this might have happened. Did communities ever split over a decision like this? It's certainly plausible. A family might decide the threat isn't severe enough to warrant such an upheaval. They might believe their alliances with other groups are strong enough to protect them. Or, in a more extreme case, they might have secret sympathies with the very group you're planning to defend against. If a faction decided to leave, it would weaken the hapu, reducing its numbers for both defense and labor. The social pressure to conform, to put the needs of the group first, would have been immense. Tonight, however, the chief's words, combined with the palpable sense of a looming threat, are effective. After a long period of discussion, where every concern is aired and addressed, a consensus is reached. One by one, the heads of the families pledge their support. The carver is assured that the young men will be organized to haul the best timber, no matter the distance. The woman concerned about the gardens is promised the first choice of plots in the new, fertile ground. A sense of shared purpose settles over the Kenga. The political and social foundations of your pa are now secure. The real work can now begin in earnest. You feel a thrill of excitement mixed with a healthy dose of trepidation. You look over at your cousins, and a silent understanding passes between you. Tomorrow, you will move earth. The morning mist has not yet lifted from the valley floor, and the world is painted in shades of gray and cool blue. The decision has been made. The community is united, and now it's time to face the reality of the task. You walk towards the designated gathering spot, where the tools for this grand endeavor are being laid out. If you were expecting a neatly organized shed filled with gleaming steel, you are about to be sorely disappointed. Welcome to your ancient tool shed, where everything is a product of ingenuity, patience, and the natural resources around you. Your primary tool, the one you'll become intimately familiar with, is the hoe, the digging stick we mentioned earlier. You pick one up. It's made from a single piece of strong, straight-grained hardwood, like manuka or tenyukaye, carefully selected and fire-hardened to a sharp point. It's about the height of your shoulder, and a small, Carved step has been lashed to the side with flex fiber, allowing you to use your body weight to drive the point into the soil. It's an incredibly simple, yet effective, piece of technology. You will use this to break up the earth, to loosen soil and pry out rocks. Next to the pile of coal are the real workhorses of earth moving the baskets. These aren't fancy woven baskets for gathering berries. They are rough, sturdy containers woven from harakeke, the New Zealand flax. You and your fellow workers will form a human chain, a living conveyor belt. One group will use the coal to loosen the earth. Another will scoop it into these flax baskets, and then they will be passed down the line, hand to hand, to be dumped where the new rampart walls will be built. It's a slow, rhythmic, and intensely collaborative process. A major piece of historical knowledge here is that large-scale earthworks in Maori society were accomplished not through advanced machinery, but through incredible human organization and endurance. Now, for the heavy-duty work felling trees and shaping timber. Your gaze falls upon the stone adzes, the toki. These are the ancient equivalent of axes and chisels. The head of the adze is a piece of hard, fine-grained stone, usually argillite or basalt, painstakingly quarried from a specific, often highly prized, location. Getting this stone was a mission in itself, sometimes involving long-distance trade or perilous journeys. Once acquired, the stone was flaked into a rough shape, and then began the mind-bogglingly slow process of grinding it against a stone ball, hour after hour, day after day, with water as a lubricant, until it had a sharp, polished cutting edge. This polished edge wasn't just for looks. It created a stronger, more durable blade. The finished adze head was then lashed to a specially shaped wooden handle. Holding one, you can feel its satisfying weight, a testament to the immense amount of labor that went into its creation before it could even be used. Alongside the adzes are smaller chisels and gouges, made from stone or sometimes bone, essential for the finer woodworking and carving that will come much later. And for the very biggest trees. How do you fell a forest giant with a stone tool? The process was a combination of brute force and clever physics. You wouldn't just hack away at the base. Instead, you and the team would use the adzes to cut a deep V shape into the trunk, a slow and laborious process. But you'd also use fire. A controlled fire would be set at the base of the tree, and as the wood charred, you would chip away the burnt layers with your adzes. It was a cycle of burning and chipping. Burning, unchipping. That could take days for a single massive tree. Here's a quirky little detail you might not think about rope. You needed immense amounts of cordage for lashing the palisade posts together, for securing the adze heads, and for hauling the giant logs out of the forest. Your rope factory is the humble harakeke. The flax blend. The women of your community are masters of turning its long, fibrous leaves into cordage of incredible strength. They would scrape the green fleshy part of the leaf away with a sharp seashell, revealing the tough inner fibers. These fibers would then be washed, beaten to soften them, and twisted or plaited into ropes of varying thickness and strength. Without this constant supply of high-quality rope, the entire construction project would literally fall apart. But what about the things you don't have? This is where historians sometimes have to infer and debate. Did PA builders use some form of wooden shovel or scoop to move earth, in addition to the flax baskets? It seems logical, but wooden tools rarely survive in the archaeological record, so the evidence is scarce. One popular theory, still under discussion, is the use of a cookow, a sort of wooden shovel or drag scoop, but a definitive, universally accepted example has yet to be found. It's a reminder that we don't know everything, and the past still holds its secrets. You look at this collection of tools: the digging sticks, the baskets, the stone adzes, the endless coils of fracture. There is nothing here that washed sorts from the landscape around you. There is no metal, no nails, no screws, no saws. Everything you are about to build, a fortress capable of protecting hundreds of people, will be done with these simple, beautiful, and labor-intensive implements. It gives you a profound respect for your ancestors. This isn't just DIY. It's building on an epic, organic scale. You find your digging stick, feel its smooth, worn handle, and join the procession of people heading towards the hill. The tools are ready. You are ready. You stand at the foot of your chosen hill, the entire community gathered around you. The air is still and thick with significance. Before a single patch of turf is disturbed, before the first swing of a stone adds, there is one final, crucial step to be taken. This is not just a construction site. It is a future home, a sanctuary, and its creation must be sanctioned by the gods and the spirits of the land. You are about to participate in the intricate rituals that will bless this project and ensure its success. The most respected elder, the Tu Honge, steps forward. He is the spiritual expert, the conduit between the physical world and the spiritual realm of the Aotearoa, the gods. His role is absolutely vital. To begin building without his guidance would be to invite disaster. To build a fortress with a spiritually rotten core. The historical understanding is that for Māori, the spiritual and practical were not separate domains. They were inextricably linked. Building a pa was as much a sacred act as it was an engineering one. The Tu Honge begins to chant a karakira, a formal incantation or prayer. His voice is deep and resonant, rising and falling in a rhythm that seems as old as the hills themselves. The words are ancient, their meanings layered and complex. You don't understand every single nuance, but you feel their power. He is addressing Tain Mahuta, the god of the forest, asking for permission to take his children, the trees, for the palisades. He is addressing Rongo Matain, the god of cultivation and peace, asking for his blessing on the Kumara fields you will plant. And he is addressing Tamatia Uenge, the god of war, asking for his strength and ferocity to be imbued into the defensive structures you are about to create. As the karakira continues, you feel a shift in the atmosphere. The everyday world seems to recede, and you are keenly aware of the unseen forces that govern your lives. This is a moment of profound focus and collective spiritual alignment. Everyone is silent, their attention fixed on the Tu Honge. This shared ritual reinforces your community bond, reminding you all that you are part of something much larger than yourselves. Now comes a part of the ceremony that might seem strange to a modern mind. The Tu Honge must determine the Māori of the land. The Māori is its life force, its spiritual essence. To protect and harness this energy for the pa, a special object, a talisman, is chosen. It might be a unique, water-worn stone, a piece of carved wood, or another object that is deemed to have a special connection to the land. This object, the Māori stone, will be ceremonial, buried at a secret, central point within the pa, often near the main gateway or at the very highest point of the fortress, the Tihai. It becomes the spiritual anchor of your home, a battery of protective energy. The location is a closely guarded secret, known only to the Tu Honge and the chief. Here's a peculiar undebated detail about these foundation rituals. Some historical accounts, particularly those from early European observers and certain oral traditions, speak of a much darker practice, human sacrifice. The story goes that to ensure the strength and mana of a truly important pa, a person would be sacrificed and their body buried in the foundations, particularly under a main post of the palisade. This is a highly contentious issue among historians and within Maori communities today. Is it a true account of an ancient practice reserved for the most extreme circumstances, or is it a misunderstanding or a sensationalized exaggeration by outsiders? The archaeological evidence for this is extremely rare and ambiguous. It remains one of those academic circles are still fiercely debating these topics, a dark shadow in the corner of an already complex history. For your pa, thankfully, the blessing is achieved through the power of karakira and the burial of the Māori stone. The final part of the blessing involves a symbolic first act. The chief, using a specially consecrated curl or dating stick, makes the first cut into the earth. It's a single, deliberate motion, breaking the skin of the land and officially marking the beginning of the physical work. This act is freighted with meaning. It's the point of no return, the moment the plan becomes a reality. After the chief makes his cut, The Tuhangme declares the site ready. The tapu, the sacred restriction, that was on the land during the ceremony is now partially lifted, allowing the work to begin. However, a state of tapu will remain over the entire project until it is completed. This means there are rules to follow. No cooked food can be brought onto the worksite. For example, as the ordinary nature of food preparation could conflict with the sacred nature of the building process. You feel the spiritual tension release, replaced by a surge of practical energy. The character are complete. The gods have been acknowledged. The land has been consecrated. A blueprint, blessed by the heavens, is now in place. You can see the invisible lines of the fortress now, superimposed over the physical landscape. You can almost feel the protective presence of the Māori stone, even though you don't know its location. The project feels sound, not just in its engineering, but in its soul. Now, you can finally pick up your tools with a clear conscience and a determined spirit. The time for prayers is over. The time for sweat has begun. The spiritual groundwork is laid. The project is blessed, and a tangible energy now buzzes through the community. But as you stand before the chosen hill, you're faced with a very green and very large problem. The entire area is covered in a thick blanket of native bush, ancient trees, and a seemingly impenetrable tangle of ferns, vines, and shrubs. You can't build a fortress on a forest floor. Before you can dig a single ditch or raise a single post, you have to clear the land, and you have to do it all by hand. This is the first truly backbreaking phase of the project. You join a team tasked with clearing the lower slopes where the main defensive earthworks will be. The smaller shrubs and ferns are the first to go. You use your stone adzes and sharpened wooden clubs to hack and bash your way through the undergrowth. It's tough, sweaty work. The air becomes thick with the scent of crushed leaves and damp earth. The ground is a treacherous web of roots and vines, tripping you up at every step. For the larger trees that stand in the way of your planned ditches and ramparts, a more systematic approach is needed. As we've touched on before, felling a large tree like a rimu or a matai is a monumental undertaking. A team of your strongest kinsmen gathers at the base of one such giant. They begin the slow, rhythmic process of chipping away at the trunk with their heavy stone adzes. Thud, thud, thud. The sound echoes through the clearing. For every handful of wood chips they manage to pry away, it feels like the tree barely notices. This is where your secret weapon comes in fire. Under the careful supervision of an elder, a small, controlled fire is built at the base of the tree, right in the notch created by the adzes. The flames lick at the wood, jarring it, weakening its structure from the inside out. The fire is not allowed to rage out of control. It's a tool, not a destructive force. After a period of burning, the team moves back in, using their adzes to scrape and chip away the blackened, brittle wood. It's much easier to remove than the living timber. This cycle of burning and chipping, can go on for hours, even days. For a single tree, it's a testament to incredible patience and a deep understanding of the materials you're working with. One of the main historical points here is the sheer scale of deforestation that occurred in New Zealand in the centuries before European arrival. While climate change played a role, a significant amount of forest was cleared by Maori for agriculture and settlement building. The image of a completely untouched, pristine wilderness before Europeans is a bit of a romantic myth. Humans have always altered their environment to survive, and you're a part of that ongoing story, clearing a patch of forest for the safety of your community. As the trees are felled, they are not wasted. Every part of the tree is assessed for its value. The straight, tall trunks are set aside for the main palisade posts. Thinner branches will be used for the secondary fences or for firewood. Even the leaves might be used for bedding or other purposes. This was a zero-waste society by necessity. Here's a small, curious detail about land clearing the problem of the tree fern. The pume, or silver fern, is an iconic New Zealand plant. They grow in abundance and their fibrous trunks can be quite tough. Clearing them is one thing, but their stumps present a unique challenge. However, your people have found a clever use for them. The fibrous trunks, when cut, can be laid upside down on muddy paths to create a stable, non-slip surface. They were the ancient equivalent of laying down boardwalks or gravel. A simple but ingenious solution to a common problem. But what about the environmental impact? Did your ancestors ever worry about clearing too much forest? This is a point that historians and environmental scientists continue to discuss. Oral traditions often contain stories that speak of the importance of conservation and of respecting Te Mahuta, the god of the forest. There are accounts of certain areas of forest being placed under a form of tapu, a religious restriction, making it forbidden to fell trees there. This suggests an awareness of the need to manage resources sustainably. However, the archaeological evidence also shows widespread deforestation. The reality was likely a complex balance between immediate needs like building a path for survival and a long-term understanding of environmental stewardship. It's a tension that societies throughout history have had to navigate. The work is relentless. Your muscles ache in ways you didn't know were possible. Your hands are covered in scratches and blisters. By the end of the day, a small patch of the hillside has been cleared. It looks scarred and messy, a chaotic jumble of felled logs, stumps, and piles of undergrowth. But it's a start. You look at the raw, exposed earth, and for the first time, you can clearly see the contours of the land you are about to transform. You see the line where the main ditch will go, the slope where the rampart will rise. The cleared land is a blank canvas. Now, the real sculpting can begin. You wipe the sweat from your brow with the back of your hand and look up at the remaining forest. There is so much more to do. The land is cleared. The earthy wound on the green hillside. The air no longer smells of damp fern, but of fresh turned soil and sawdust. Now, the first and most fundamental feature of your fortress begins to take shape. You are about to become part of a human digging machine, embarking on what feels like a great ditch digging marathon. This isn't just a trench. It's the primary line of defense, the first obstacle any attacker will face, and its creation will test the limits of your community as endurance. You stand with dozens of others, lining the path that the two Hung Iron chief have marked out on the ground with ashes. This will be the outer boundary of your paw. The signal is given, and in unison, you and the others drive your coal, your digging sticks, into the earth. The top layer of soil is soft, laced with a fine network of roots, and it gives way easily. You use the footrest on your hoe for leverage, putting your whole body weight into it, breaking up chunks of earth. Then the human conveyor belt springs into action. Another team moves in behind you, scooping the loosened soil into the rough flax baskets. The kid, as soon as a basket is full, it's passed down a long line of people, men, women, and older children, all working together to be dumped on the inner side of the line you're digging. This is where the rampart wall will be built. But for now, it's just a growing pile of earth. The system is rhythmic, efficient, and hypnotic. Dig, scoop, pass, dump. Dig, scoop, pass, dump. The only sounds are the grunts of exertion, the scrape of wood against soil, and the quiet murmur of the baskets being passed from hand to hand. This system of organized labor is a key historical point. The sheer scale of some Pa earthworks is staggering, even by modern standards. Archaeologists have calculated that the construction of a large, complex Pa would have involved moving thousands of tons of earth. This was only possible through this kind of mass participation, highly organized, production line-style labor. It speaks to a society capable of complex project management and of mobilizing its entire population towards a common goal. As you dig deeper, the work gets harder. You hit a layer of dense clay. It's heavy, sticky, and clings to your hoe. Each chunk has to be laboriously pried loose. Then you hit rock. The sharp clink of your fire-hardened wooden tip against stone is a frustrating sound. For smaller rocks, you work together with the person next to you, using your hoe as levers to pry them out. For larger ones, the work stops entirely as a team has to be brought in to painstakingly dig around the obstacle and roll it out of the way. Progress slows to a crawl. Here's a small, clever detail of ditch digging that shows a deep understanding of defensive principles. You don't just dig a simple U-shaped trench. The ideal defensive ditch is V-shaped, with steep, almost vertical sides. This makes it incredibly difficult to climb. An attacker trying to scramble down one side would build up momentum, only to slam into the opposite face, unable to get a foothold. Furthermore, the very bottom of the ditch is often kept narrow, sometimes only wide enough for one person. This funnels attackers into a confined space, making them easy targets for defenders on the rampart above. Some even had a small, square-cut channel at the very bottom of the V, designed to break the ankles of anyone who jumped in. It was a brutally effective piece of psychological and physical warfare. Your ditch will be deep, not just waist deep, but well over your head. The goal is to create a barrier that cannot be easily crossed. You're not just digging a hole, you're creating a zone of death. The psychological impact on an attacker looking down into a deep, steep-sided ditch, knowing that defenders are waiting for them on the other side, would be immense. But did every paw have these massive ditches? Historians and archaeologists know that paw design varied enormously. The size and depth of the ditches were often a direct response to the natural terrain. On a gentle slope, like the one you're working on, a massive ditching rampart system was essential. But for a paw built on a cliff-girt headland, with sheer drops on three sides, a huge system might only be needed on the one accessible side. It's a classic case of form following function. The builders used earthworks to enhance the natural defensibility of the site, not to replace it. There's an ongoing debate about how these different styles evolved. Was the V-shaped ditch a later innovation, a response to more organized forms of warfare? Or were different styles simply regional variations? Like a local accent, the evidence is still being pieced together, one excavated ditch at a time. Days turn into weeks. The ditch gets deeper and longer, snaking its way around the contour of the hill. Your body has found a new rhythm of aches. Your hands, once soft, are now tough and calloused. You work from sunrise to sunset, fueled by the shared purpose and the ever-present, low-level fear of the threat that made this work necessary. You are no longer just an individual. You are a component in a large, earth-moving machine. You look at the immense trench taking shape before you, a testament to what your community can achieve with simple tools and unified will. It's far from finished, but it's the first solid, tangible piece of your new security. The ditch is a deep, raw scar in the earth, a testament to weeks of relentless labor. But a ditch alone is not a fortress. No, you turn your attention to the mountain of soil that has been piling up on the inner side of the trench. This isn't just a spoil heap to be carted away. It is the raw material for your next line of defense, the rampart. You are about to take the very earth you excavated and transform it into a formidable wall. The process is, in essence, the reverse of digging the ditch, but with its own set of skills and challenges. The baskets of earth, which were once passed away from the ditch, are now carefully passed up the growing mound. Your job is now on the wall itself. You stand on the loose earth, and as each basket arrives, you tip it out and then begin to compact it. This is the crucial step. A loose pile of dirt is a poor defense. It can be easily scrambled over and will quickly erode. You need to create a solid, stable structure. Your tools for this are simple. Your own feet and a heavy wooden damper, which is little more than a thick, flat-bottomed log that you lift and slam down repeatedly. It's another form of grueling, rhythmic work. Slam, slam, slam. You and your team work in unison, moving across the fresh layer of earth, compacting it until it is firm and solid. The goal is to build the rampart up in thin, compressed layers. This technique, known as rammed earth construction, is an ancient building method found in various cultures around the world, and your people have perfected it for your specific needs. This is a major historical point. The ramparts of a paw were not just simple mounds of dirt. They were carefully engineered structures. The angle of the outer face, rising from the ditch, was often made as steep as possible to complement the ditch's slope, creating a single, intimidating obstacle. The inner side, however, was often less steep or even terraced, allowing your own warriors to easily climb to the top to defend it. As the rampart grows higher, it becomes more difficult to get the earth up to the top. The human chain has to work harder, passing the heavy baskets up a steep and unstable slope. It's dangerous work. A slip could send a shower of dirt and rock down on the people below. The whole operation is a finely tuned choreography of effort and trust. Here's a fascinating and rather clever construction detail that archaeologists have uncovered. To make the ramparts even stronger and more resistant to erosion and attack, your builders would often incorporate other materials into the earth. You might see a team laying down a layer of bracken fern or branches on the wall before the next layer of earth is dumped and compacted on top. This vegetation acts as a kind of natural rebar, binding the soil together and making the entire structure more stable. Sometimes, large rocks or wooden posts were embedded within the rampart to serve the same purpose. It was a form of ancient composite material, a testament to a deep, practical understanding of physics and engineering. The height of the rampart is a critical decision. Taller is obviously better for defense, but it also requires moving more earth and creates a less stable structure. There's a trade-off. How high is high enough? Again, this is a subject of discussion for modern scholars. The height likely depended on the perceived threat. Against a neighboring hapu armed with clubs and spears, a rampart twice the height of a man might be sufficient. But later, as we will see, new weapons would change these calculations entirely. You pause for a moment, standing atop your growing wall. You are now high above the surrounding ground level. From here, you'll have a clear view down into the steep V of the ditch. Any attacker who made it into that ditch would be completely exposed to projectiles thrown from where you now stand. You can already imagine your warriors lined up along this wall, ready to defend their homes. The defensive logic of the design is becoming visually real, but the wall isn't finished when it reaches its desired height. The final stage is to dress the outer face. A team comes along and carefully trims the slope, making it as smooth and steep as possible. Sometimes, they would even plaster it with a layer of wet clay, which would dry to a hard, slippery surface, offering no handholds or footholds to a potential climber. You look along the length of the ramparts, making its way around the hill. It's a huge, imposing structure, a man-made cliff rising from the bottom of the man-made canyon of the ditch. It has transformed the gentle slope of the hill into a serious military obstacle. It's a wall made of nothing but the dirt under your feet, compacted by your own labor. It's a powerful statement of your community's ability to reshape the world to its will. The combination of the deep ditch and the high rampart now forms the primary defense of your pole. But it's only the beginning. The next stage of construction will rise from the top of this earthen wall, reaching for the sky. The great earthworks of the ditch and rampart are complete. They form a formidable barrier at the base of your hill, but a pie is more than just a single defensive line. Now, you lift your gaze to the main body of the hill itself. It's still just as steep, scrubby slope. This is where you will live. Then you can't live on a 45-degree angle. Your next task is to meticulously sculpt the very hillside into a series of livable, defensible levels. It's time to carve the terraces. The process is a smaller scale version of what you've already mastered. You're not digging a massive ditch, but a series of them. You and your team start at the top of the main rampart and begin to dig back into the hillside. You use your hoe to loosen the earth into flax baskets to move it. But instead of hauling it away, you pull it forward, dumping it at the edge of the level you are creating and compacting it to build up a small, flattened space. You are essentially creating a series of gigantic steps leading up the hill. Each terrace, or T-high, will have a flat area for housing, cooking, and daily life, and a steep, scarped face leading down to the next level. This design is a work of genius, and a key feature of many classic PAW. It's a solution to multiple problems at once. Firstly, it creates usable, flat land on a steep hill. Secondly, it's a brilliant defensive system. Imagine you are an attacker. You somehow manage to cross the main ditch, scramble up the slippery rampart, and get inside the paw. Your fight is far from over. You now find yourself on the lowest terrace, looking up at another steep, compacted earth wall, with defenders on top of it. raining down rocks and spears. If you manage to take that terrace, you are faced with another, and another, and another. The entire part is a multi-layered defense and depth system. It forces an attacker to fight for every single foot of ground, and a confusing, uphill battle, all while being exposed to attack from above. It's physically and psychologically exhausting. You work your way up the hill, carving out one terrace at a time. The chief and the two Hongme have planned the layout carefully. The largest, most prestigious terraces at the very top of the hill, the Tihai or Tua Papa, are reserved for the chief, his family, and the most important communal structures. The lower terraces will be for the other Wanu groups. The layout of the Pa is a physical map of your social structure. Your place on the hill literally reflects your place in the society. This is a crucial historical understanding. The archaeology of a Pa reveals the social hierarchy of the people who lived there. Here's a small, practical detail that often gets overlooked: drainage. Carving a series of flat surfaces into a hill creates a major water management problem. When it rains, and it rains a lot here, each terrace could turn into a pond, and the runoff could erode the steep scarps you so carefully built. To prevent this, you have to incorporate drainage channels into your design. You dig small, shallow channels at the back of each terrace, angled to direct the rainwater to the sides of the pond safely down the hill. It's a subtle but vital piece of engineering that protects the integrity of your earthworks. But were all Pa terraced like this? No. And this is where historians and archaeologists find endless fascination. Pa architecture was not a one-size-fits-all template. The use of terraces depended heavily on the local topography. For Pa built on sharp, narrow ridges, extensive terracing might not have been possible. Instead, they relied on a series of ditches and ramparts crossing the ridge at intervals, creating a linear defense. For Pa and volcanic cones, the natural shape of the hill was often imperfectly suited to terracing, and you can still see the magnificent, spiraling terraces on cones like Mauna Kea, IE One Tree Hill in Auckland today. There's an ongoing debate about the primary function of some of these terraces. Were they all for defense and housing, or were some of them, particularly the wider, sun-facing ones, also used for small-scale gardening? It's plausible that certain hardy crops might have been grown within the Pa walls, providing a small but secure food source during a siege. The evidence is often ambiguous. Archaeologists might find faint traces of garden soil or storage pits on a terrace, but it's hard to say definitively if this was a widespread practice. It remains a what if that adds another layer of complexity to these structures. You pause in your work, leaning on your hoe, and look back down at what you've accomplished. The hillside is no longer a simple, uniform slope. It's a complex, sculpted environment. You can see the logic of it now. You can see the pathways, the living spaces, the defensive walls. You are not just building on the land. You are changing its very shape to suit your needs. You are turning a simple hill into a complex, layered fortress village. The earthworks are now largely complete. The skeleton of your Pa is in place. Now, it's time to give it its skin and its teeth, the timber. The great earthworks are done. The hill has been reshaped, carved into terraces, and girded by a formidable ditch and rampart. But earth alone does not make a Pa. Now you need wood, lots of it. You need massive, straight, strong timbers for the palisades, the defensive fences that will crown your earthen walls. And for that, you must journey into the deep forest, the domain of Te Mahuta. This is the Great Timber Expedition. You are part of a large party of the strongest and most skilled members of your community. This isn't a casual stroll. Entering the deep forest is an act fraught with spiritual significance. Before you go, the two Hangi performs another karakir, asking Tain for his blessing and forgiveness for taking his giant children. You enter the forest in a state of tapu, of sacred restriction. There is no loud talking, no foolishness. You move with respect and purpose. The forest is a different world. The light is dim, filtering down through a dense canopy hundreds of feet above. The air is cool and smells of moss and decay and life. Your goal is to find the perfect trees, You're not just looking for any wood. For the main palisade posts, the ones that need to last for generations and withstand a determined assault, you need the king of the forest, the tutera. Tutera wood is prized for its incredible durability and resistance to rot, thanks to the natural oils it contains. It's also relatively straight-grained and workable with stone tools. Finding a stand of mature tutera is like finding a treasure. An elder who knows the forest intimately leads you to a sacred grove. These trees are ancient, their trunks wider than 3 men standing shoulder to shoulder. Choosing which trees to fell is a careful process. You don't just take the biggest and best. You select the ones that are straight, strong, and suit the specific needs of the paw's design. Then comes the monumental task of felling one. As we've discussed, it's a slow, arduous process of controlled burning and chipping with your stone adzes. The thud of the adzes against the wood is a muffled, dense sound in the quiet of the forest. It takes an entire day, maybe more, for a team to bring down one of these giants. The final moments are tense, as the tree begins to creak and groan. Shouts of warning go up, with a final, terrifying tearing sound and a crash that shakes the very ground you stand on. The forest giant is down. A key piece of historical knowledge is that this entire process, from selecting the tree to felling it, was steeped in ritual. It was believed that the tree had its own Māori, or life force. A special karakia would be said over the fallen tree to placate its spirit. This was just superstition. It was a demonstration of a worldview where the natural world was alive and sentient, and resources were to be taken with respect and gratitude. Now the tree is down, but it's deep in the forest, miles from your paw site. How do you move a log that weighs many tons? You don't have wheels or draft animals. You have rope and manpower. First, the log is roughly trimmed and delimbed. Then, thick, strong ropes woven from flax fiber are tied around it. And then, the real work begins. It's a brutal, coordinated effort of hauling and levering. You and dozens of others pull on the ropes, your muscles straining, your feet slipping on the damp forest floor. The log moves inches at a time. Another team uses long wooden levers to pry the front end of the log up over obstacles. An elder chants a rhythmic work song, a tuka moana, to help everyone pull in unison. Tul, heave, tul, heave. The chant keeps the rhythm, focuses the mind, and turns a crowd of individuals into a single, powerful hauling machine. Here's a quirky and ingenious detail of this process: the use of skids to make the logs slide more easily over the ground. Smaller, rounded logs are placed under it like rollers. As the main log is pulled forward over one skid, that skid is picked up and run to the front of the line to be placed down again. It's a simple, leapfrogging system of temporary rollers that dramatically reduces friction. For particularly wet or swampy areas, a causeway of logs might be laid down to create a solid track. But was this the only way? Some historians' oral traditions suggest another, more ambitious method for transporting logs, especially near waterways. It's theorized that communities would sometimes dam a small stream to create a temporary pond. The log would be floated into this pond, and then the dam would be broken, releasing a flash flood that would help carry the log downstream to a more accessible location. This is a topic of some debate, as direct archaeological evidence for such dams is hard to find, but it speaks to the incredible ingenuity and landscape engineering skills that your people possessed. The journey back to the paw site is a slow, grueling procession. It takes days. Your body aches with a deep, profound fatigue, but as you finally emerge from the shadows of the forest and see your half-finished paw on the hill, a sense of triumph washes over you. You have brought the bones of the forest back to be the bones of your fortress. You and your team have accomplished an incredible feat of logistics and raw power. The giant Aotearoa logs now lie at the base of the ramparts, ready to be shaped and raised, ready to become the silent, watchful guardians of your new home. The giant Aotearoa logs lie at the base of the rampart, smelling of fresh-cut wood in the deep forest. They are the bones of your fortress, waiting to be raised. Now comes one of the most visually dramatic moments in the construction of your power, piecing the main palisade wall, the Aotearoa. This is not just a fence. It's the primary timber defense, a formidable barrier of thick, imposing posts that will stand atop your earthen wall. First, the logs need to be prepared. Using your stone adds zest. You and the other woodworkers spend days shaping the timbers. The tops are sharpened to a menacing point. The bottoms are sometimes charred with fire to help preserve them from rot once they are in the ground. This is skilled work. You need to create a relatively flat inner surface so the posts stand and close together. But you leave the outer surface rounded and natural, making it harder to climb. While you are shaping the posts, another team is busy on top of the rampart, digging the holes where the palisades will stand. This is harder than it sounds. The rampart is made of densely compacted earth, and digging into it is a chore. They dig a deep, continuous trench along the crown of the rampart. The depth is crucial. At least a third of each post needs to be buried to ensure it is stable enough to withstand a heavy assault. Once the posts are shaped and the trench is dug, the immense collaborative effort of raising the palisade begins. There are no cranes, no buck and tackle. There is only human strength, leverage, and coordination. A team of your strongest people gathers around a single, massive post. With a combination of lifting and levering, they walk the post to prey until its base can be guided into the trench. It's a slow, precarious balancing act. A mistake could send the multi-ton log crashing down. As the base of the post slides into the hole, another team is ready with ropes. They heave and pull, bringing the post to a perfectly vertical position. Once it's upright, everyone swarms around the base, backfilling the trench with earth and rocks, and tamping it down furiously to lock the post in place. It's an electrifying moment of shared effort, culminating in a single, solid thump as the post settles into its final position. One by one, the main posts are raised, standing shoulder to shoulder. These main posts, called tukumara, are the anchors of the wall. They are the largest and strongest timbers. Between them, you place slightly smaller, but still substantial, posts. The goal is to create a solid, unbroken wall of wood. This is a key historical point. The main palisade of a fighting paw was not a flimsy fence. It was a heavy-duty wall, often several meters high, made of timbers as thick as a man's body. It was designed to be an intimidating and very real barrier to entry. But a wall of vertical posts still has gaps. This is where the lashing comes in. You use the miles of flax rope, the cordage that the women have been preparing, to bind the wall together. You weave the rope in and out, lashing the post to horizontal railings, called katoa, that run along the inside of the wall. This lashing is an art form in itself. The patterns are not just functional. They are often beautiful and symbolic. A well-lashed wall is a sign of a community's skill and mana. This intricate system of lashing makes the entire structure incredibly strong and flexible, able to absorb the shock of an attack without shattering. Here's a curious detail that adds another layer of ingenuity to the design. The tops of the palisade posts were not always uniform. Some were sharpened to a simple point. Others were intentionally left with forks or branches at the top. Why? It's believed these were to snag the woven cloaks or mats of any attackers trying to climb over, holding them in place and making them vulnerable. It's a small, nasty detail that shows the builders were thinking about every possible scenario. However, did all have these massive, heavy-duty palisades? This is a topic that keeps archaeologists busy. The evidence suggests, once again, that there was huge variation. Some, particularly earlier or smaller ones, may have had lighter, simpler fences. The truly massive timber walls are often associated with the later classic period of pa building, when warfare may have become more intense and formalized. The standard image of a pa with its towering wooden walls is a bit of a generalization. The reality was a diverse architectural landscape. There's an ongoing discussion about whether the investment in such a massive palisade was always worth it. It required an enormous amount of labor. Were there times when a community decided a lesser fence on top of a great earthwork was good enough? It's likely these kinds of cost-benefit analyses were made all the time. You stand back and look at what you've built. A sheer wall of sharpened timber now crowns the earthen rampart. It seems to grow organically from the hill, a fusion of earth and wood. It completely changes the character of your paw. Before, it was a series of impressive earthworks. Now, it is a fortress. It looks grim, menacing, and secure. The pointed tips of the two terra posts stand out against the sky like a row of jagged teeth. They are a clear warning to anyone who might approach with ill intent. The main backbone of your defense is now in place, a testament to the forest strength and your community's will. The main palisade is a magnificent, intimidating sight. It's your heavy-duty front line, the strong outer shell of your fortress. But a wise builder knows that one wall is never enough. An attacker, sufficiently motivated, might eventually find a way to breach it. So what happens then? You need a plan B. Your next job is to construct a second, inner fence, a lighter and more frustrating obstacle designed not to stop an enemy cold, but to confuse, slow, and entangle them. You move to the space between the main palisade and the scarp of the first terrace. This area, known as the Parakiri, is a kill zone. It's a flat, open space where any attacker who gets over the first wall will be completely exposed. And you're about to make it even more treacherous. The fence you build here is not made of massive terra logs. Instead, you use thinner, more flexible saplings and branches, often manuka or kanyokaye, the same strong, pliable wood you used for your digging sticks. These are driven into the ground, but not as close together as the main palisade. The key here is the weaving. You take long, flexible branches and weave them horizontally between the upright posts, a technique called wattle. This creates a light but surprisingly strong fence, almost like a giant, rigid basket. This fence is called the pikarangi. It's not as tall or as thick as the main palisade, but that's not its purpose. Its main goal is to be an annoyance. It's another thing to climb, another obstacle to break through, and because it's lighter and more flexible, it's awkward to deal with. Bashing it with a heavy club, a mere, might not break it. It might just spring back. It's the ancient equivalent of a chain-link fence, not a solid wall, but a frustrating barrier that saps an attacker's energy and momentum. Acre piece of historical knowledge, here is the concept of defense in depth. The paw is not designed to be a single, impenetrable shell. It's a layered system. The ditch, the rampart, the main palisade Aotearoa, and this secondary fence pikarangi all work together. Each layer is designed to strip the attacker of their energy, cohesion, and morale. By the time an enemy reaches the inhabited terraces, they are meant to be exhausted, disorganized, and vulnerable. Now for a particularly clever and nasty detail of this inner fence. You don't just build one straight line of it. You build it in a confusing, maze-like pattern. You create dead ends and narrow passages that force attackers to move in single file, right where your defenders on the terrace above can pick them off. This intentional confusion is a form of psychological warfare. An attacker, adrenaline pumping, breaches the main wall expecting a straight charge, only to find themselves in a confusing labyrinth, unsure of which way to go, with death raining down from above. Furthermore, the ground in this space between the two fences is not left clear. It's often deliberately seeded with traps. You might help dig small, concealed pits, called rueke, awuri, designed to be just big enough for a foot to go into, breaking an ankle. The ground could also be covered with sea ultropias made of sharp, fire-hardened wooden sticks or spiky plants. The entire area is designed to be a nightmare to traverse. But did every paw have this complex double palisade system? The archaeological footprint of a light fence like the pikarangi is much fainter than the massive post holes of the main palisade. The thin saplings rot away more quickly, leaving very subtle traces. This leads to an ongoing archaeological debate. How common was this feature? Was it a standard part of every major fighting paw, or was it a more specialized addition, perhaps used by particular IWI tribes or during specific periods of intense conflict? Some of the most detailed early European drawings of POC clearly show this double wall system, but pinning down its exact prevalence across the country is a challenge that relies on painstaking, unsubtle excavation work. You finish your section of a woven fence. It doesn't look nearly as impressive as the towering main palisade. It looks almost flimsy by comparison, but you understand its purpose. It's not about brute strength. It's about strategic frustration. It's the tripwire after the blast door. You can picture the chaos it would cause. An enemy warrior, exhausted from climbing the main wall, lands in the Pirakuri, hesitates for a second, and then has to face this awkward, springy, woven barrier. As he struggles to get through it, he is a perfect, slow-moving target. It's a simple, low-cost, and highly effective addition to your defenses. You have successfully built a second layer of annoyance, another frustrating question for any potential attacker to answer. Your fortress now has its outer skin of earth and timber, and its frustrating inner layer of woven fences. An attacker would have a terrible time getting in. But what about you? You need a way to get in on doubt during peacetime without compromising your security. Now you must tackle one of the most psychologically and strategically important parts of the paw, the entrance sewer, or Waharaway. A gate is always the weakest point of any fortress, so your job is to design one that is confusing, narrow, and exceptionally dangerous for anyone who is not welcome. You don't just got a simple opening in the palisade. That would be an open invitation. Instead, you create a complex, multi-stage gateway. The entrance begins outside the main ditch. You've left a narrow causeway of earth, a land bridge, across the ditch at one specific point. This bridge is deliberately kept narrow, forcing anyone who approaches to do so in single file, exposing their flank to your defenders on the wall. Once they cross the bridge, they reach the opening in the main rampart and palisade. This opening is not a straight tunnel. It's a chicane, a winding passage that forces at least one or two sharp turns. It's impossible to see all the way through to the inside, and it's impossible for a large group of attackers to charge through at once. They are forced to slow down and enter one by one. This is a key principle in defensive architecture worldwide, and your people have perfected it. By forcing an enemy into a narrow, winding passage, you rob them of their numerical advantage and their momentum. A small number of defenders can easily hold this bottleneck against a much larger force. The passage itself is a death trap. The walls are high, and there are likely concealed openings, or murder holes, in the sides and top, through which defenders can thrust spears at anyone trapped within the passage. Now for a wonderfully clever and unique feature of many PA entrances. The path doesn't just go through the main palisade. It often emerges into the open space between the main palisade and the secondary fence, the Pikarangi, so an attacker who makes it through the main gate passage isn't safely inside. They are trapped in that killing zone we talked about, forced to navigate the maze like secondary fences to find the next opening. You might even design it so the entrance and the exit from this middle zone are at opposite ends, forcing a long, exposed traverse. The gate itself is another interesting feature. You don't have a hinged door with a lock and key. The opening was typically blocked by a series of heavy, movable timber bars or even a solid, sliding slab of wood that could be dropped into place. In times of high alert, the entrance might be sealed completely with earth and rocks, making it indistinguishable from the rest of the wall. This leads to a quirky little logistical problem, the trick entrance. Oral traditions are full of stories about PA with secret or deceptive entrances. They PA might have a very obvious, well-defended main gate, which was a trap, while the real, cleverly hidden entrance was used by the inhabitants. This hidden entrance, or Aramuona, might be a small, disguised opening in a remote part of the palisade, or even a tunnel. Archaeologists are still debating how common these secret entrances really were. Finding conclusive evidence of a deliberately hidden tunnel or gate is incredibly difficult. Was it a common feature, or is it more of a folktale? A romantic notion of outsmarting the enemy? The jury is still out, but it adds a wonderful layer of mystery to these structures. You are part of the team lashing the heavy timbers that form the frame of the main gateway passage. The wood is thick, designed to withstand a battering ram. You help set a massive, heavy lintel stone or a thick timber beam across the top. The entire structure is over-engineered for strength. As you work, You are constantly aware of the psychology of the design. You are building a space that is designed to feel claustrophobic, confusing, and menacing. You want any uninvited guest to feel a knot of dread in their stomach as they enter this dark, winding passage. You step back and look at the completed entrance. From the outside, it's a dark, narrow opening in the formidable wall. It doesn't look like much, but you know the truth. It's not a door. It's a filter. It's a machine designed to separate friend from foe, to turn the strength of an attacking army into a weakness, and to give your defenders every possible advantage. Getting into your paw should be easy for a friend, but a deadly puzzle for an enemy. Your tricky entrance is now ready to do its job. Your paw is now a formidable maze of earthworks, palisades, and deadly entrances, but all your defenses are currently on one level. To truly dominate the battlefield, you need the high ground, not just the natural high ground of the hill, but a purpose-built structure that allows you to see farther and fight from a position of tactical superiority. It's time to build your fighting tower, the Puhera. You and a team of skilled woodworkers select some of the longest, straightest, and strongest timbers remaining from your forest expedition. These will form the legs of the tower. The location is chosen with extreme care. You don't just build it anywhere. The Puhera is typically constructed at a strategic corner of the paw, or most importantly, directly overlooking the main entrance sewer, the Waharoe. From this vantage point, your defenders will have a perfect, unobstructed view of anyone approaching the gate, and they can rain down projectiles on attackers trapped in the narrow entrance passage below. The construction is a masterpiece of jointing and lashing. You don't have nails or screws. Remember, the entire structure is held together by skillfully cut joints and immense quantities of strong flax rope. The four main legs are sunk deep into the ground for stability. Then, you begin to build the platform. Cross beams are notched and fitted to the legs, and then lashed securely in place. On top of these beams, you lay down a solid floor of thick planks, leaving small gaps between them. This is a key historical point. The Puhera was not just an observation post. It was an active fighting platform. The gaps in the floor were a deliberate feature. They allowed defenders on the platform to thrust spears or drop rocks directly onto the heads of enemies who might be trying to attack the base of the tower. It was a 360-degree defensive weapon. As the structure rises, it feels precarious. You climb up the lash ladders, hauling timbers and tools. The wind is stronger up here, but once the floor is laden, the railings are lashed in place. It becomes a surprisingly solid and stable platform. It might be 2 or even 3 stories high, towering over the main palisade wall. From the top of your newly constructed Puhera, the view is breathtaking. You can see for miles. You can follow the path of the river, see the distant coastline, and monitor the entire surrounding landscape for any sign of movement. Your defensive vision is extended dramatically. But more importantly, you can see every corner of your own paw. You can look down into the killing zone between the 2 palisades. You can see the entrances to the terraces, and you have a commanding view of the main gate. The Puhera is the nerve center of the paw's defense. Here's a curious little detail about what was on these towers. They weren't just bare platforms. They were often stocked with ammunition. Not arrows or bullets, but piles of rocks and stones, ranging from hand-sized throwing stones to larger boulders that would be rolled over the edge. Some accounts describe defenders using a kotaha, a type of whip sling, to launch projectiles with greater force and distance from the top of the Puhera. The tower was a ready-made arsenal. But how common were these elaborate towers? This is another area of healthy academic debate. While oral traditions and early European drawings are full of them, the archaeological evidence can be elusive. A wooden tower leaves behind only for post holes in the ground. It can be difficult for an archaeologist to definitively say, these for post holes were a watchtower, and not a food storage platform, or a small house, or something else entirely. The interpretation of these features requires careful analysis of their location and the surrounding evidence. Some scholars argue that the truly large, multi-story Puhera were a relatively late development, perhaps even a response to the tactics of musket warfare, while earlier Pa may have had simpler, smaller raised platforms. You stand on the completed behera, the wind in your hair, leaning against the sturdy railing. You feel a sense of power and security that you didn't have down on the ground. The entire logic of the Pa's defense is laid out below you like a map. You can see how an enemy would be funneled through the gate, trapped between the walls, and forced to climb terrace after terrace, all while being watched and targeted from this very spot. The tower connects all the other defensive elements together. It's the eyes of the fortress. Your Pa is no longer just a static defense. With the Puhera, it has become an active, watchful guardian. Your Pa is now structurally complete. It is a masterpiece of earthwork and timber engineering, a formidable and functional fortress. But it lacks a soul. It lacks a face. Now comes the part of the project that transforms it from a mere military installation into a true home and a statement of your identity. It's time to add the carvings. And nowhere is this more important than at the main gateway. The Waharaway. You are not one of the master carvers. The Tuhung Awha. That is a role of immense prestige, requiring years of apprenticeship and a deep knowledge of history, genealogy, and symbolism. You are part of the team that assists them, preparing the wood, making the tools, and watching in awe as they work. The master carver selects a huge, thick slab of Aotearoa wood, the same prized timber used for the main palisade posts. This will become the lintel, the pier, that sits above the entrance. The carver doesn't just start chipping away. He sits with the wood for a long time, studying its grain, chanting Karakir to bless the timber and his tools. The act of carving is sacred, releasing the spirit or form that is believed to be latent within the wood. His tools are small, refined versions of the toki adzes you've been using, along with a variety of sharp stone, bone, and even Panamu greenstone chisels for the fine detail work. Then he begins, slowly, with incredible precision. Figures begin to emerge from the flat surface of the wood. This is not just decoration. This is storytelling in timber. A key historical understanding is that Maori carving is a form of writing, a visual language that records genealogies, wakapawa, historical events, and mythological stories. The main figure in the center of the lintel might represent a founding ancestor of your hapo, a powerful, protective presence watching over all who enter. The spiraling patterns, the Aotearoa, represent the unfolding of life and the connection between generations. The outward-facing, tongue-poking figures, the Wheku, are not just fearsome. They are a symbolic challenge, a projection of the mana and strength of your people, designed to spiritually repel enemies. You watch, fascinated, as the carver works. He taps his stone chisel with a wooden mallet, and a perfect spiral curl emerges. He uses a shark tooth, hafted to a small handle, to incise the fine lines on the figures' faces, the detailed patterns of the moko or tattoo. The entire community understands the meaning of these symbols. The carving reinforces your shared identity, reminding everyone of who they are and where they come from. Beyond the main gateway lintel, other parts of the pa are also adorned. The tops of the most important palisade posts, particularly those near the entrance, are often carved into stylized human figures, or teko. These are the silent guardians of the wall, each representing a different ancestor. They stand watch, their power shell eyes glinting in the sun, a permanent garrison of ancestral spirits. Here's a fascinating detail that speaks to the psychology of the design. The carvings are almost always outward-facing. The most intricate and intimidating work is reserved for the parts of the paw that an enemy would see. The inside of the paw, the living spaces, tended to be simpler. The primary function of this high-status art was projection, to project power, to project history, to project a warning. It was the paw's face, its psychological armor. But did every single paw have these magnificent, elaborate carvings? The answer, which keeps historians and archaeologists on their toes, is almost certainly no. High-status carving required immense skill, time, and resources like giant slabs of premium Aotearoa wood, it's highly likely that only the most important Aotearoa, the homes of powerful chiefs, would have been adorned with these kinds of masterpieces. Smaller, more functional, or temporary pa might have had very simple or no carvings at all. There's a continuing debate about the regional styles of carving. Just like an accent, carving styles varied between different IWI. An expert can often tell where a carving comes from just by looking at the specific way a figure is rendered or a pattern is formed. You help hoist the finished lintel into place above the main gateway. The transformation is immediate and profound. What was once a dark, functional opening is now a powerful statement. To enter the pa, you must now pass under the gaze of your ancestor. The entire fortress feels different, more alive. It now has a voice. It speaks of your history, your strength, and your place in the world. The carvings are the final, beautiful, and intimidating touch. They have given your fortress its mana. Your pa is now a secure and beautiful fortress, adorned with the stories of your ancestors. You have a place to fight, but a community cannot survive on fighting alone. It needs to eat, and the cornerstone of your diet, the fuel for all this hard labor, is the kumara, the sweet potato. You've harvested a bountiful crop from the fields at the base of your hill, but now you face a critical challenge: how to store it through the long, wet winter months so it doesn't rot. You can't just pile it up in a hut. You need a specialized storage solution. You need an underground fridge. It's time to dig your rua. You move to a designated area within the pa, on one of the well-drained terraces. The soil here has been chosen carefully. It needs to be stable and not prone to flooding. Your next task is to dig a hole, but this is a very different kind of hole from the defensive ditches you dug earlier. This one requires precision and care. You are creating a subterranean storage pit, the Rua Kumara. Using your smaller digging sticks and hand tools, you begin to excavate. You dig a narrow shaft straight down, just wide enough for a person to climb in and out of. Once you get down a few feet, you begin to hollow out the earth sideways, creating a bell-shaped chamber underground. The shape is crucial. The narrow opening at the top minimizes the amount of moisture and temperature fluctuation from the outside world, while the wide, cavern-like space below can hold a huge quantity of kumara. This is a major historical point. Food storage technology was absolutely critical to the survival and success of Maori communities, especially in a temperate climate like New Zealand's. The ability to successfully store kumara over winter meant the difference between a strong, well-fed community ready for the spring planting season and a weak, starving one. The Rua was one of the most important technological innovations that allowed for permanent settlement and population growth. The work is claustrophobic and difficult. You take turns being lowered into the pit to scoop out the dirt, which is then hauled up in flex baskets. As the chamber expands, you have to be careful not to cause a cave-in. The stability of the soil is everything. Once the pit is fully excavated, the interior walls are often smoothed over, and sometimes even charred with fire. The fire hardens the clay walls, making them more resistant to moisture, and the charcoal lining can help absorb ethylene gas, which is released by the kumara and causes them to spoil faster. It's a simple but effective form of ancient food preservation science. Here's a cool and clever detail about these pits. Before the kumara are placed inside, the floor of the pit is often lined with a layer of fine, dry gravel or sand. This acts as a desiccating layer, wicking away any ground moisture that might seep in and keeping the tubers dry. The kumara are then carefully stacked inside, not just dumped in a pile. They are arranged with their gaps between them to allow for ventilation. Finally, the narrow opening at the top is sealed with a heavy stone plug or a wooden lid, and then covered with earth to make it airtight and waterproof. A well-constructed rua could keep kumara fresh and edible for many months. But were all food pits underground like this? This is where the archaeological record gets interesting and sparks debate. Archaeologists have found evidence of many different types of storage structures. While the subterranean rua is a classic form, there were also semi-subterranean pits. which were basically a shallow depression with a wooden roof built over the top. In some very swampy areas, where digging deep was impossible, raised storage platforms, called palisades, were used instead. These were small, ornately carved storehouses built on top of posts. So the underground fridge was just one tool in a whole toolkit of food storage solutions, the choice of which to use depended on the local soil conditions, the climate, and the specific food being stored. You helped to lower the final baskets of gamara down into the cool, dark chamber of the newly finished rua. The air inside smells sweet and earthy. It's a smell of security, of sustenance, of life. You have successfully banked your community's wealth for the coming season. Looking around the terrace, you see the sealed lids of a dozen or more of these pits, their locations known only to the families who own them. The fortress you have built is not just a defense against enemies. It is also a defense against hunger in the changing seasons. By securing your food, you have secured your future. The heart of the Pa is not just its warriors, but its well-stocked larderess, hidden safely beneath the earth. Your Pa is now a masterpiece of defense, a symbol of your identity, and a secure vault for your food supply. It seems perfect, but you've overlooked one of the most basic and critical necessities of life. A few days into a hypothetical siege, a dry, scratchy feeling in your throat would alert you to a catastrophic design flaw. You need water. A fortress without a reliable, secure water source is nothing but a trap, where the defenders will be forced to surrender or die of thirst. Your next, and perhaps most vital, task is to secure your water supply. You think back to that initial scouting mission. Your team chose this site partly because of that small, clear spring you found, tucked into a fold on the hillside. But the spring is located halfway down the slope, outside the main palisade wall. This is a common and dangerous problem. During a siege, sending a party outside the walls to fetch water would be a suicide mission. You need to find a way to either protect the spring or bring the water inside. One option is to extend your defenses. You could build a fortified corridor, a sort of protected walkway with its own palisades, leading from the main Pa down to the spring. This would allow your people to access the water without being exposed. This is a major undertaking, essentially building a small, specialized extension to your fortress. It requires more logs, more digging, more lashing. It also creates a new potential weak point in your defenses that would need to be guarded carefully. This is a key historical point. Access to water was a primary factor in the location and design of a Pa. Many of the most successful and long-lived Pa were situated on sites with natural springs or streams located within the defensive perimeter. On volcanic cones, for example, the porous rock often holds water, and shallow wells could be dug to tap into it. The archaeological remains of these wells, cisterns, and protected springs are crucial clues for understanding how a Pa functioned as a living space. But what if your site has no natural spring inside the walls? This is where ingenuity comes into play. You would need to rely on water storage. You could dig dedicated cisterns, similar to your Kamara pits but lined with a thick layer of waterproof clay, designed to collect and store rainwater. The roofs of your houses could be designed to funnel rainwater into these cisterns. However, relying on stored rainwater is a risky gamble. In a long, dry spell, your supply could run out. Here's a strange and fascinating detail that some oral traditions and archaeological findings suggest. In Sumpa, particularly those built on porous volcanic cones, a very specific type of plant was sometimes cultivated. The Rangira plant has large, broad leaves that are tough and almost waterproof. It's believed that these leaves were used to line storage pits to help hold water. It's a form of ancient, organic waterproofing, using the resources of the forest to solve a critical engineering problem. The debate among historians and archaeologists on this topic is lively. How did Pa with no obvious water source survive a siege? Was it through meticulous water rationing? Did they have secret, unknown methods of tapping groundwater? Or is it possible that many of these Pa were not designed for long-term sieges at all? Perhaps they were intended as temporary refuges, places to hold out for a few days, after which the inhabitants would either have to fight their way out or negotiate a truce. The function of the pa as a permanent citadel versus a temporary refuge is a central question that the water problem highlights. Your pa, with its external spring, faces this question head-on. After much debate, your chief decides on a combined approach. The main strategy will be to protect the spring. You and the team are tasked with building the fortified corridor. It's hard work, extending the palisades down a steep, awkward slope. At the same time, other teams inside the pa are digging 2 large cisterns on the main terrace, which will be lined with clay and filled with water from the spring as a backup supply. It's a belt and braces approach. You help to set the last post on the protected walkway to the spring. It feels good. You have now secured the lifeblood of your community. You can withstand a siege not just for days, but for weeks if necessary. You can keep your warriors strong, your children healthy, and your community alive. It's not the most glorious part of the pa. It's not a towering palisade or a beautifully carved gateway, but this simple, protected path to a small trickle of water may well be the most important structure you have built. Your fortress is no longer a trap. It is a viable, sustainable home. The massive, communal effort is finally winding down. The ditches are dug, the walls are raised, the food is stored, and the water is secured. The skeleton of your community's new life is in place. But where are you going to sleep? The final piece of the construction puzzle is the most personal one. It's time to build your own house. You'll wear a cozy, thatch-roofed home within the safety of the fortress walls. You've been allocated a spot on one of the terraces. It's not a huge plot of land, just enough for a small, rectangular dwelling for your family. The houses are built close together, reflecting the tight-knit nature of the community. You begin by outlining the floor plan on the ground. For a standard dwelling, you might dig down a little, so the floor of the house is slightly sunken. This helps with insulation, keeping the house warmer in winter and cooler in summer. The framework of the house is made from wooden posts and beams, but these are much smaller and lighter than the massive timbers used for the palisades. The main structural elements are a central ridge pole supported by 2 upright posts, and a series of smaller posts forming the walls. The clever part is the roofing. The rafters are long, flexible saplings, bent over the ridge pole and tied down to the wall posts, creating a strong, frame structure that comes down almost to the ground. This architectural style is a key feature of traditional Māori building. The low profile, earth-hugging design with a steeply pitched roof is incredibly resilient. It's aerodynamic, meaning it can withstand strong winds, and the steep roof sheds the heavy rain efficiently, keeping the interior dry. It's a design perfected over centuries to suit the specific climate and conditions of Aotearoa. Now for the cladding. You don't have bricks or planks. The walls of your ware are made from a variety of materials. You might use stacked sods of earth, or more commonly, panels made from the trunks of pangei, the tree fern. The most common method, however, is 2 lash bundles of reeds or thick grasses, like todi, to the wooden framework. The roofing is the most important part for keeping dry. You and your family have spent days gathering bundles of raupo, bullwish, or other suitable grasses. You then attach these to the roof battens in overlapping layers, like giant shingles. You start at the bottom and work your way up, so each layer covers the fastenings of the one below it. Well, that's true. Several inches thick, is completely waterproof and an excellent insulator. Here's a small, cozy detail about the interior. There is only one small, low doorway and usually no windows. The doorway is covered by a woven flax mat. This design minimizes drafts and helps to keep the warmth in. Inside, the floor is covered with layers of dried grasses and soft flax mats for comfort. In the center of the floor is a small, sunken fire pit, lined with stones. The smoke from the fire finds its way out through small gaps in the thatch at the apex of the roof. It's a dark, smoky, but warm and surprisingly comfortable space. But we're all the buildings inside a pa just simple family homes. This is where archaeology complicates the picture. Excavations have revealed the foundations of many different types of buildings within a pa's walls. There were the standard sleeping houses Wapuni, but also dedicated cooking shelters KIHINI, which were often much flimsier structures, sometimes with no walls, to keep the risk of fire away from the main sleeping houses. There were also the large, ornate meeting houses which were the heart of the community's social and political life, and the raised, carved storehouses for prized goods patake. The pa was not just a dormitory. It was a functioning village with a variety of specialized buildings. The exact layout and types of buildings are still a subject of study, and likely varied greatly from one pa to another. You crawl through the low doorway of your finished way. Your eyes take a moment to adjust to the dim light. The air smells of dry grass, wood smoke, and earth. It's small, it's simple, but it is yours. It is a private sanctuary within the larger sanctuary of the pa. After months of sleeping in temporary shelters or out in the open, the feeling of having a solid, waterproof roof over your head is one of profound comfort and security. You have built a fortress to protect your community. No, you have finally built a home to protect your family. The great construction is over. No, life in the pa can begin. The last timber has been lashed. The last thatch roof is in place. The frantic energy of construction has subsided, replaced by the steady hum of daily life. Your pa is no longer a work site. It is a bustling, fortified town. But building the physical structure was only half the battle. Now you must navigate the complex social rules, the unwritten laws, and the delicate etiquette of living in close quarters with several hundred of your relatives. Welcome to the challenging world of politics and social dynamics. Life is structured and communal. You wake with the sun, the sounds of your neighbors already filling the air. There are no private gardens or sprawling backyards here. The terraces are communal spaces. The central, open area on the main terrace, the Māori, is the heart of the pa's public life. It's where meetings are held, where important visitors are welcomed, and where children play under the watchful eyes of their elders. A fundamental aspect of this life is the concept of tapu in Noah. You learn it about tapu during the construction, as a state of sacred restriction, but it's also a part of daily life. The chief's house, the main meeting house, the top of the pa, the chi, and anything to do with the head, which is considered the most tapu part of the body, are all subject to strict rules. For example, you would never pass food over someone's head. This would be a grave insult, a violation of their personal tapu. These rules govern social interactions and maintain respect and order. The opposite of tapu is noa, which means common, or free from restriction. Cooking and everyday food are considered noa, which is why cooking areas are always kept separate from the more sacred spaces like the marae or the chief's dwelling. This division of the world into sacred and common realms is a core historical principle of Maori society. Then there's the etiquette of sharing. You live in a society built on reciprocity, or Aotearoa. This isn't just about revenge, as it's often translated. It's about balance. If a family shares their catch of eels with you, you are expected to return the favor in the future with something of equal value. Perhaps some of your kumara or a finely woven mat. This constant exchange of goods and services is the glue that holds the community together. It builds relationships and ensures that everyone's needs are met. Failing to uphold your obligations would bring you shame, or double you hakana. Here's a curious detail about daily life personal hygiene. With hundreds of people living in a confined space, sanitation was a serious concern. Designated areas, usually on the outer, downwind slopes of the pa, were used as the trains, or paipa. These were often simple structures, sometimes just a log to squat on over a pit or a steep slope. Keeping human waste away from the living areas and the water supply was critical for preventing the spread of disease. It's a mundane detail, but it shows a sophisticated understanding of public health. But what happened when things went wrong? What about crime and punishment? This is a complex area that historians still debate. There was no formal police force or court system. Justice was typically administered by the community, guided by the chief and elders. A theft might be punished by the offender having to return the goods and pay compensation. A form of duty. A more serious crime, like a violation of tapu or a physical assault, could result in shelling, loss of status, or even banishment from the virtual death sentence in a world where survival depended on your community. The ultimate goal was not just to punish the offender, but to restore the balance and harmony of the group. The exact legal processes are not perfectly understood and likely varied from place to place, making it a rich field for historical inquiry. You learn to navigate this intricate social web. You learn who to go to for advice, which elders hold the most knowledge of history, and which families have a surplus of fish this week. You learn the subtle art of not causing offense, of showing the proper respect to your seniors, and of contributing your fair share to the communal good. Life is not private. Your business is every honest business. A dispute between you and a neighbor can quickly become a matter for the whole Wanu to resolve. This is your new reality. It's a life of limited privacy and constant social obligation, but also one of incredible security and belonging. You are never alone. There is always someone to help you, to teach you, to share with you. The pie is more than just a fortress of earth and wood. It is a fortress of people, a complex, living organism held together by a shared history, a shared purpose, and a delicate, intricate web of social rules. The seasons have turned. Life in your new pa has settled into a comfortable rhythm of planting, fishing, weaving, and storytelling. The fortress has become home, but the reason you built it has not gone away. The simmering tension with your neighbors has finally boiled over. Beirut, breathless and exhausted, arrives with the news a war party, a TIUA, is on the move. They will be here by morning. The time for drills is over. This is the real thing. A controlled, focused energy electrifies the ball. This is the moment you have prepared for. There is no panic, only purpose. The chief and the warriors gather on the marae, their faces grim but determined. The women and children begin securing the food stores and filling the water cisterns to the brim. The main gateway is sealed, not just with its timber bars, but with heavy rocks and earth piled up behind it. From now on, the only way in or out is over the walls. You are not one of the elite, frontline warriors, but you are part of the defense force. Your station is on the main terrace, just behind the interwoven fence. The Pikarangi. Your weapons are simple a pile of smooth, heavy throwing stones and a long, fire-hardened spear. Your job is to support the main fighters on the palisades and to deal with any enemy who makes it into the killing zone. As dawn breaks, you see them. A long column of warriors, maybe 200 strong, emerging from the morning mist at the edge of the forest. They are a terrifying sight. Their bodies painted, their weapons glinting. They stop just out of range and begin their war dance. The hooker. It's a thunderous, rhythmic performance of stomping feet, bulging eyes, and extended tongues. The sound echoes off your palisade walls. But it's not just a random display of aggression. The haka is a challenge, a test of your resolve. From within your walls, your own warriors answer with their own haka, a defiant roar that shakes the very ground you stand on. The psychological battle has begun. Then, the attack starts. A wave of warriors rushes forward, heading for the main gateway, but your design works perfectly. The narrow causeway across the ditch funnels them, and the defenders on the puhera and the main palisade begin to rain down stones and spears. The attack on the gate falters under the heavy barrage. The main body of the war party now attempts a direct assault on the wall. They carry rough, makeshift ladders and thick woven mats to protect themselves from projectiles. They surge into the deep, V-shaped ditch. This is where your first line of defense proves its worth. The steep, slippery sides of the rampart are almost impossible to climb under fire. Warriors slide back down, getting tangled up with those behind them. The ditch becomes a scene of chaos and confusion. A few of the most determined and athletic attackers manage to scramble up the rampart and reach the main palisade. This is a critical moment. The warriors on top of the wall engage them in close quarters combat, using short clubs and spears to repel them. From your position on the terrace, You hurl your throwing stones over the wall, aiming for the heads of the climbers. You see an attacker snag his cloak on one of the forked tips of a palisade post, just as you deplanned, and he is quickly dispatched. This is a key historical point. A direct frontal assault on a well-defended pa was an incredibly costly and often futile exercise. The defenders had every advantage: height, protection, and a deep understanding of the fortress's defensive features. Because of this, many attacks on pa did not involve a full-scale assault. Instead, they often devolved into a siege. After the failure of their initial assault, the enemy pulls back. They set up a camp just out of range. The siege begins. For days, it's a waiting game. They try to cut off your water supply, but your fortified corridor to the spring holds strong. They try to taunt you, to lure you out into the open for a battle on their terms. But your chief is too wise to fall for it. You live on your stored kamara and the water from your cisterns. Life inside the paw is tense, but you're safe. Here's a small, curious detail about siege warfare. It wasn't always about constant, brutal fighting. Sometimes, it involved single combat. A champion from each side might agree to a duel in the open space between the paw and the enemy camp, with the fate of the entire conflict potentially resting on the outcome. It was a way to prove mana and resolve without the massive loss of life of a full battle. The strategic and ritualistic aspects of Maori warfare are a subject of deep historical study and fascination. But did sieges always end in a clear victory or defeat? Historians debate the true nature of these conflicts. Many probably didn't end with the storming of the paw, but with a negotiated settlement. After a few weeks, with supplies running low on both sides and the planting season approaching, the two sides might meet to arrange a truce. The attackers might leave with their honor satisfied, having proven their strength, and the defenders would have successfully protected their homes. The lines between winning, losing, and a strategic draw are often blurry. Today, however, your defense has been absolute. The enemy war party, having lost men in the initial assault and seeing the strength of your fortifications and the resolve of your people, decides the prize is not worth the cost. One morning, you wake up, and their camp is gone. A great cheer erupts throughout the paw. You have done it. Every ditch you dug, every post you raised, every stone you placed has done its job. Your DIY fortress has been tested by fire, and it is held. You feel an immense sense of pride, relief, and a deep, unshakable bond with the people you stood beside. The victory is sweet, and life in the paw returns to a state of watchful peace. Your fortress, built with ancient knowledge and muscle power, has proven itself to be the ultimate defense. But a new sound is beginning to echo through the land. A sound that will shatter your world and render your brilliant design dangerously obsolete. It's the sharp, deafening crack of a musket. At first, it's just a rumor, a story brought by travelers from the coast. They speak of strange, pale-skinned visitors arriving in huge canoes with sails like clouds. And they speak of the weapons these visitors carry, sticks that speak with fire and thunder, capable of killing a man from a distance far beyond the reach of a spear or a throwing stone. You listen to these stories around the fire, a note of unease tightening in your stomach. Then, you see one for the first time. A neighboring hapu, one with which you have a trading relationship, has acquired a handful of muskets from a whaling ship in exchange for a huge quantity of flax and smoked fish. During a friendly visit, a warrior proudly displays his new weapon. It's a long, heavy, metal and wood object, far different from your beautifully carved taiahar or your brutally effective mare. He loads it with black powder and a small lead bowl, raises it to his shoulder, and fires it at a large datera tree. The explosion is shocking, a violent trip in the fabric of the familiar sounds of the forest, the puff of acrid smoke, the kick of the weapon, and the small, neat hole it leaves in the tree. It's a demonstration of a terrifying Undalian power. This moment marks the beginning of a profound and devastating shift in Maori society and warfare. The arrival of the musket in the early 19th century triggered a massive arms race among different IWI. This period is now known as the Musket Wars. A tribe with muskets had an almost unimaginable advantage over a tribe that only had traditional weapons. This is a crucial historical turning point. The balance of power, which had for centuries been based on numbers, strategic skill, and the strength of a paw, was completely upended. Suddenly, your magnificent paw, the one that so perfectly repelled a traditional attack, looks fragile and vulnerable. Your towering wooden palisade, designed to stop a man with a club, offers no protection against a lead ball. In fact, it's worse than useless. The tightly packed timbers can create deadly splinters when hit by a musket ball. Your fighting towers, the blue Hera, which gave you a commanding view, now just make your best warriors into easy, elevated targets for a distant shooter. The entire logic of your defense is turned on its head. Here's a small, grim detail about this new form of warfare. The early muskets were wildly inaccurate. They were mortar flintlocks, difficult to aim and slow to reload. A single warrior might take a minute or more to reload after firing one shot. Because of this, the tactic wasn't about skilled sharp shooting. It was about volley fire. A line of warriors would all fire at once towards the enemy palisade, hoping that a few of the dozens of lead balls would find their mark. It was impersonal, noisy, and brutally effective at suppressing defenders. But how did your people get these weapons? The demand for muskets became astronomical. I would go to extraordinary lengths to acquire them, trading vast quantities of food, timber, and, most famously, flax fiber, which was highly prized by the Europeans for making rope. Some Hapu would spend an entire year processing flax to trade for just a few precious muskets. This relentless pursuit of firearms radically altered the economy, settlement patterns, and the very fabric of society. It's a topic of intense study and debate among historians. Did the Europeans who traded these weapons understand the catastrophic consequences of introducing them into a society rife with intertribal tensions? The answer is complex, ranging from willful ignorance to deliberate exploitation. You stand on your main terrace, looking at the palisade wall that you built with so much sweat and pride. It no longer looks like a shield. It looks like a cage. You are safe from spears and clubs, but you are trapped, a perfect target for an enemy with muskets standing 100 yards away. The fear is different now. It's not the fear of a chaotic, close-quarters battle. It's the fear of an invisible death that can snatch you from a distance. Your world has been irrevocably changed. The old ways of fighting are over. The old ways of building must change too. If you are to survive, you must adapt. You must learn to build a new kind of fortress. The age of the musket has dawned, and the terror of this new weapon has forced a complete revolution in your thinking. Your beautiful, traditional paw, with its tall palisades and proud fighting towers, is now a death trap. To survive, you must evolve. You are about to participate in the design and construction of a new, radical type of fortress, the gunfighter paw, or Pairi. The first thing you learn is that height is no longer your friend. You abandon the idea of towering wooden walls. The new design principle is to get low and use the earth itself as your primary protection. The massive earthen ramparts you built before are still useful, but they will be modified. The goal now is to create a structure that can absorb musket fire, not just block it. You and your community begin to construct a new style of fortification. Instead of a single high palisade on top of the rampart, you now build a much lower but more complex system. The outer fence is still there, but it's more of a screen than a solid wall, designed simply to break up an enemy charge. The real defense is the earth. At the top of the main rampart, you dig a deep, narrow trench system. This is the firing trench. It's deep enough for a warrior to stand in, protected from incoming fire, with only his head and shoulders exposed when he rises to shoot. The earth that you dig out of the trench is piled up on the outer side, creating a thick, bullet-absorbing parapet. This is a fundamental change in defensive philosophy, moving from a static wall to a dynamic system of trenches. This is a core historical point. The gunfighter POW was a remarkable and rapid military innovation, developed by Maori engineers in response to a new technological threat. It showed incredible adaptability and a sophisticated understanding of ballistics. But a straight trench has a weakness: an enemy who gets to one end can fire down the entire length of it. To counter this, you incorporate a European concept that your people have observed and perfected: the bastion. At the corners of your PA, you build out angled earthworks. The bastions, that project from the main wall. From within these bastions, your defenders can fire along the face of the main trench line, creating a devastating crossfire, or shrinking fire, on any attacker who gets close to your walls. This means there are no safe angles of approach for the enemy. Here's a fascinating and intricate detail of these new PA: the communication trenches. To allow your warriors to move safely from one part of the fortress to another without being exposed to enemy fire, you dig a network of deep, narrow communication trenches connecting the firing lines, the bastions, and the living areas. The entire PA becomes a subterranean labyrinth, a maze of protected pathways. An outsider looking at a gunfighter PA from a distance might only see low, grassy mounds of earth, underestimating the incredible complexity and strength of the defensive network hidden within. But did this new design mean abandoning all the old ways? This is where historians find interesting hybrids and variations. Many gunfighter PA were not built from scratch. They were adaptations of existing, older PA. A community might add trenches and bastions to their traditional fortress, creating a hybrid design. Some also retained a single, strong palisade, but instead of packing the timbers tightly together, they were spaced apart and the gap was filled with packed earth and stones, creating a composite wall that was much more resistant to cannon and musket fire. The idea that there was a sudden, clean break between traditional and gunfighter PA is an oversimplification. The reality was a period of rapid experimentation and adaptation. You are in the firing trench, the cool earth packed around you. It feels strange, almost cowardly, compared to standing proudly on a palisade. But it is smart. You peer through a small loophole, a narrow firing slit left in the earthen parapet. You can see the battlefield clearly, but you're almost completely protected. You can now fight the enemy on their own terms. The noise of a musket battle inside one of these trench systems would have been deafening, the air thick with smoke, but it was a system that worked. These new PA were so effective that they proved incredibly difficult for even the technologically superior British colonial forces to capture in later conflicts. You look at the complex geometry of your new fortress: the angled bastions, the deep trenches, the hidden pathways. It is less visually spectacular than your old PA, less a work of art and more a machine for war. But it is a testament to your people's resilience, their intelligence, and their will to survive. You have taken a terrifying new weapon and engineered a brilliant solution to counter it. Using the same materials you have always used: the earth, your ingenuity, and your collective will, you have successfully adapted, building a formidable gunfighter PA that can withstand the new realities of warfare. For several generations, these ingenious fortresses, and the conflicts they were built for, define the landscape and the lives of your people. But as you look around the land now, a strange quiet is falling. The sharp crack of the musket is heard less and less. The great PA, once bustling with life and bristling with defenses, are slowly beginning to fall silent. Why? The decline of the PA is not due to a single, dramatic event, but a slow, complex unwinding of the conditions that made them necessary in the first place. One of the most significant factors is the end of the large-scale intertribal warfare that had dominated the past few decades. A new, more powerful force has established itself in the land the British Crown. With the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi in 1840 and the establishment of a colonial government, a new rule of law, Pākehā law, began to be imposed. While conflict certainly didn't cease overnight and would later flare up again in the form of the New Zealand Wars between Māori and the Crown, the era of constant, independent warfare between IWI began to wane. The primary reason for huddling together in a massive fortress was slowly eroding. This imposition of a new order is a major historical point. The colonial government actively discouraged tribal warfare and began to mediate disputes. For some, this brought a welcome peace, a respite from generations of conflict. With the reduced threat of a surprise attack from a neighboring tribe, the need to live in a cramped, heavily defended hilltop fortress became less urgent. Alongside this forced peace came a profound economic and social shift. The new European settlers, the Aotearoa, brought with them a completely different way of life, centered on individual land ownership, agriculture for profit, and a cash economy. Your people are drawn into this new world. You begin to grow new crops like wheat and potatoes, not just for your own survival, but to sell at the new colonial towns that are springing up. To do this effectively, you need to be near your fields, which are often on the flat, fertile lowlands far from your defensive hilltop path. So you begin to move. Families start building their way down on the flats again, closer to their crops and the new trading posts. The paw on the hill doesn't disappear overnight. It's still there, a place of immense symbolic importance, the seat of your chief and the link to your ancestors. You might return to it for important gatherings, for funerals, or if a threat re-emerges. But it is no longer the center of your daily economic life. It is slowly transforming from a bustling town into a part-time citadel and a ceremonial center. Here's a small, poignant detail of this transition. As people moved away, they often took parts of the paw with them. A family might carefully dismantle the carved timbers of their house or a small storehouse and rebuild it in their new lowland settlement. These carved pieces were taonga, treasures, imbued with ancestral value. They were too important to be left behind. So the paw was often deconstructed piece by piece, not just abandoned. But was this a peaceful, voluntary process? This is a point of huge and painful debate among historians and in New Zealand society. The decline of the paw is inextricably linked with the loss of Māori land, through a combination of legitimate sales, questionable deals, and outright confiscation by the colonial government, especially after the New Zealand Wars. Vast tracts of Maori land were alienated, as the land surrounding a paw was sold or lost. The economic and spiritual basis for the fortress's existence was cut away. A paw without its supporting lands, its farms, its forests, its fisheries is just a hill. The story of the paw falling silent is also the story of this immense loss of land and autonomy. You stand on the ramparts of your once mighty gunfighter paw. The trenches are beginning to soften, grass growing over their sharp edges. Many of the houses inside are empty, their thatch roofs starting to sag. A deep sense of melancholy hangs in the air. The peace is welcome, but it has come at a great cost. Your world has changed in ways you could never have imagined. The skills you learned how to build a bastion, how to survive a siege are becoming obsolete. A new set of skills, how to navigate a Pakehau legal document, how to negotiate and sail are now the keys to survival. The silence of the paw is the sound of a whole way of life fading into the past. Centuries have passed. The world of muskets, of stone edzers, of great timber expeditions, has faded into memory and history. But the work you did is not entirely gone. You are standing on a hilltop on a bright, breezy New Zealand day. The air is filled not with war cries, but with the gentle bleating of sheep and the distant hum of a car on a country road. You are walking through the ghost of the paw you built. At first glance, it's just a lumpy, grassy hill, but as your eyes adjust, you begin to see it. You are walking on the ghost of your fortress. That long, linear depression snaking around the contour of the hill. That's the ditch you dug with your cow, now softened and drowned by 150 years of rain and wind. The high ridge running alongside, it is the rampart your people built, basket fuel by basket fuel of compacted earth. It's lower now, slumped and eroded, but its form is unmistakable. You scramble to the top of the rampart and your breath catches in your throat. You can see the whole layout, the series of broad, flat steps climbing the hill. Those are the terraces you carved, where your ware once stood, where children played, where the smoke of cooking fires once scented the air. You can trace the faint outline of the sunken floors of the houses, subtle depressions in the grass. You can see the deeper pits that were once your Kamara stores, your underground fridges, now just circular hollows in the ground. This is the central experience of visiting a paw site today. It's an act of historical imagination. The wooden palisades, the fighting towers, The carved gateways, they have all rotted away. Returning to the earth, what remains is the earthwork, the bones of the fortress. The archaeological study of these earthworks is a key source of knowledge about the past. By surveying these lumps and bumps with modern technology like LIDAR, which can see through vegetation, archaeologists can create incredibly detailed maps of these sites, revealing their complexity in a way that was never before possible. You walk towards the entrance. The narrow causeway across the ditch is still there, a thin strip of land connecting the paw to the main ridge. You follow the path up through the gap in the rampart. You can feel the chicane, the sharp turns designed to confuse attackers. Even though the timber walls are long gone, you are walking through the ghost of the Aotearoa. Here's a small, poignant detail you notice. On one of the upper terraces, near where the chief's house would have been, you see a scattering of shells, mostly cockles and mussels. They are ancient, bleached white by the sun. This is a midden, a refuse heap. It's the accumulated kitchen waste of the people who lived here. To an archaeologist, this is a treasure trove. By studying the contents of the midden, they can learn what your people ate, what season the paw was occupied in, and even gather information about the environment at the time. To you, it's a tangible, humble link to the daily act of living in this place. Someone sit here, eating these shellfish, hundreds of years ago. But as you wander these silent earthworks, you're confronted with a question that historians and IWI tribes still grapple with today. How do we best preserve and respect these places? Many paw sites are on private farmland and are vulnerable to damage from grazing stock or plowing. Others are being eroded by the sea or damaged by development. There is a constant effort by heritage groups, local councils, and especially the descendants of the paw builders, your descendants, to protect these waitapu. These sacred sites, are they historical monuments to be studied? Are they ancestral grounds to be revered? Are they public parks to be enjoyed? They're all of these things at once, and balancing these different values is an ongoing challenge. You stand on the very top of the hill, the Te High, where the chief's house once stood and the Māori stone of the paw was buried. The wind blows through the tall grass, and it almost sounds like a whisper. You close your eyes and you can almost see it. You can see the towering palisades, the glint of power shell eyes on the carved posts. You can smell the wood smoke. You can hear the murmur of voices and the laughter of children. The ghost fort comes alive in your mind. The physical structure is gone, but the memory, the story, and the spirit of the place remain, etched into the enduring earth. You are standing on the Te High, the highest point. The wind a constant, gentle pressure against you. The sun is warm on your face. The ghosts you have been walking through for the past hour are no longer just historical outlines. They feel personal now. This project, this immense undertaking that spanned months of your life, is complete, and you realize, in this quiet moment, that your work was never truly finished when the last house was built. Its completion is now, in this enduring legacy, in the way the land itself has become the final monument. The land remembers your work. Every terrace, every ditch, every pit is a scar of memory, a wrinkle in the skin of the earth that tells a story of effort and survival. This is the ultimate historical truth of what you built. The timber has rotted. The carvings have been lost or moved to museums. But the earthworks, the immense shapes you sculpted, have healed. They have become a part of the geology of this place. They are as real and as permanent as the bedrock beneath them. Your strength, your sweat, your community's will, it's all still here, held in the quiet grammar of the landscape. You look beyond the paw itself, out to the surrounding country. Your project wasn't confined to this hill. Its tendrils reached far into the landscape. You see a dark patch of remnant forest on a distant ridge. That is where you went on the great timber expedition, where you felled the giant Tatera. You see the gleaming curve of the river in the valley below. That is where you gathered eels and freshwater mussels. You follow a line of slightly different vegetation across a neighboring field, a subtle clue that archaeologists now use to trace ancient pathways. That is the route you would have taken to the coast to trade for shark teeth and obsidian. The paw was never an island. It was the heart of a living body, and its veins and arteries were the paths and resources that connected it to the wider world. This entire landscape is your project file. But as you stand here, a bridge between the past and the present, you are faced with one final, complex question, one that is still being debated today. Who owns this memory? Now that the PA is a historical site, what is its purpose? For some, it is a classroom, a place to learn about engineering and history. For others, it's a tourist attraction, a scenic spot for a walk. But for the descendants of the people who built it for your descendants, it is something more. It is an Urape, the burial ground. It is a Wahetapu, a sacred place. It is a direct, physical link to their ancestors. To you, the ongoing discussion in modern New Zealand is how to honor all of these truths. How do you balance the public's desire to access these sites with the deep, spiritual connection of the Mana Wenua, the local tribe who holds guardianship, or Keitiaki Tonga, over this land? It's a conversation about respect, about storytelling, and about who has the right to speak for the ghosts who linger here. Your part in the story is over. You chose the land. You blessed it. You shaped it. You defended it. You lived here. Your legacy is not in a book or a plaque. It's in the quiet, undeniable presence of the earthworks. The land remembers your name, even if the world has forgotten it. It remembers the weight of the basket of earth in your hands, the satisfying thud of the temper, the shared chant of hauling a great log from the forest. The project is complete, and the land itself is the final. Faithful storyteller, the wind on the hilltop begins to soften, its gentle hum a lullaby that seems to rise from the earth itself. The sharp edges of the ditches and terraces in your mind's eye are blurring, covered now by a soft blanket of grass and the slowly lengthening shadows of the late afternoon. The story fades, its vibrant characters and their immense struggles receding into the deep, quiet archives of time. The scent of wood smoke and damp earth is replaced by the simple, clean air of the approaching evening. You can feel your own breathing deepen, swimming with the slow, ancient rhythm of the land. The weight of the digging stick is no longer in your hands. The tension of the siege has long since passed. There are no more walls to build, no more enemies to watch for. There is only this peace, this profound sense of completion. The great project is done. The community is safe. The stories have been told. You are drifting now, floating gently above the sleeping fortress. The grassy mounds and hollows below look like a sleeper, breathing softly under a green blanket. The land remembers, but it is a sleepy memory now, a dream of a time long past. And you are part of that dream, drifting away from the hill, over the quiet valleys and the dark, sleeping forests, until the PA is just a small, peaceful shape in a landscape of slumber. Let the story settle. Let the quiet come. The work is over. Now, there is only rest. The end of the article. Good night.